far too many of you dying. You know you've got to find a way to bring some love in here today. Oh, Father, Father, we don't need to escalate. No, war is not the answer, for only love can conquer hate. You know we've got to find a way to bring some love in here today. Oh, with picket lines and picket signs, don't punish me with brutality. Just come on and talk to me so you can see. Oh, what's going on? What's going on? Hey, what's going on? I'll tell you what's going on. Everybody thinks we're wrong. Whoa, but who are they to judge us? Simply for singing our pro-peace song. Yeah. Oh, you know we've got to find a way to bring some understanding here today. Yeah. With a picket lines. Punish me with brutality. Just come on and talk to me so you can see.
Hello. First of all, let's have a big hand for Joan Zen. Thank you. But Joan Zen is always the group Deborah and Jason Hicks, who whenever there's a good cause and people need to open their hearts, Deb and Jason are always there to volunteer their time and their music and their love. And let's give them one more hand because it will make me happy. Thank you. Thank you. You know, I want to welcome all of you here tonight, and we're going to have some wonderful time together. And there's lots of food, there's drinks, there's wonderful auction items. We're actually going to have a little bit of a live auction at some point, and I'm so glad that you all came. We're actually going to start the evening. Khenpo Namchak, who is from Tibet, he is going to actually start the evening with just a blessing especially for all the people in Pakistan, which is why we're here tonight. And there's images of the suffering that's happening in Pakistan, and also a great resilience of spirit that we can all learn a lot of lessons from. And so we're hoping that we can all open our hearts tonight and be together and learn a lot about Pakistan. We have some wonderful people here tonight who are going to talk to us about Pakistan, what the effort has been to help alleviate the suffering there. And as all of you know, there's over 20 million people that are being affected by the flooding in Pakistan. And it's not a natural disaster. I mean, part of it is natural, but a lot of it is because of the way that we live on the earth. And there's been a lot of deforestation and devegetation, just like in this country. I mean, we know what happened with Hurricane Katrina. And so if we can learn to live more in harmony with this planet and Mother Earth, then when the rains come and the earthquakes and the floods and the hurricanes, we can be more in balance. So tonight we're going to learn more about Pakistan. We're going to learn more about this wonderful earth. And I'm so glad that you all are here. Khenpo is going to do a little blessing, don't sit down, to kind of welcome us. And it's always a pleasure. And then we have a wonderful man from Pakistan who's going to talk for a minute. We're going to have a wonderful presentation by Solmaz from Teachers Without Borders, who's working with PODA, really offering great relief in Pakistan. And also Sarah from the Geography Department is going to talk to us again about the Earth systems a little bit. It's going to be wonderfully fun. We're going to have a little bit of a live auction, and then John Turk is going to give a wonderful talk. And I love to talk about John Turk, so I'll give a short introduction when that time comes. And also Sarang Wangmo, a wonderful Tibetan nun, is going to sing a song for us, which is going to be very special. So here's Khenpo Namchak. And so, yes, so let's all receive some blessings. We can all use them as well as the world. Thanks. Khenpo, why don't you use that?
Sanjo semjo rumbo ji ma ji panam ji ji ba nyam ba me ba ye gong ne gong de pe ba jo ja wa gun je jeng ra do je ja ve yam ja ma le je ven del Kunda ma nyan ma pa mo yang jen ma dan sanam jodara nam ja rik je ma dan jik je ma yen je ma da yen le ja dan sing den na je drama jik den sam ja no de Tra xie den ze tra pong jon ze tro nye den ze rab ye ma dan ba ve jen ma pa me na ma za jen mo ma fam jam ra tre ma dan wa zre jen ma de ro ke sin zo le de ma je sam den dram ze da Chi la re u je te ma Java kunje jengara duje jave yam jama le jave thalen gundama Nyarma pamo yang chen ma dan sanan jodar nam jari je ma dan ji je Yen je ma tho yen le jadan sing den na je drama ji den sam ja no dare ma Tra che ten ze dra pon jon ze tro nya den Rabye Madam Babi Vijim. Pame Nama Mada Jimo Mabam Jamor Te Madam Ozere Jimandu. Ruka Sinzo Lido Maji Samden. Dajan Chila Reo Jizima Java Kunje Jengara Dukje Jabe Yamja Male Jabe Telen Kunduma Nyama Pamo Yangje Madan Sanan Chudra Namja Rikze Madan Jizze Yenja Madho Yenle Jadan Singden Naje Drama Jiden Samja Noderma Raji Demze Drapon Jonze Tonya Demze Raja Madan Babe Pame Nama Madha Jimo Mohan Jamor Tre Madan Wazre Jimandu Ruka Sinzo Lido Maji Samde Dajan Chila Reo Jizima Sanam Deya Tamje Zibani Tamnani Bedana Bamze Jega Namje Walan Droba Seben Zolen Droba Droba Jo. Okay, thank you.
All right, are we blessed or what? Thank you, Kempo. Next, Faisal Khan is going to come speak. And Faisal is this wonderful man who's a graduate student. He's from Pakistan, and he had to leave Pakistan the day that the floods hit. And I hope Faisal is here. I see people looking for him. Faisal, hello. Is he? Ah, here he is. Okay, great. Sorry. Faisal is from Pakistan. He left the day that the floods hit and left his family behind. He is a graduate student here at the University of Montana. Also, he lectures at the university in Pakistan. And his specialty and expertise, Charlie, don't light that. They don't allow us to light the candles here. Thank you. It's just for looks. You're so helpful. And Faisal, his expertise is on emergencies and disasters, and we're very lucky to have him here with us. Thank you, Faisal.
Thank you very much, everybody, for having me here tonight. Usually I speak mainly about science, earthquake, and stuff like that, but tonight I'm supposed to talk about the flood and basically share my story with you, what happened when actually the flood hit. So this summer, like just as normal, I went back to Pakistan doing my field work in the Kashmir and the northern areas of Pakistan, and everything was, oh, this one is not working? Okay, sorry about that. So as usual, I was doing my field work and everything was just normal, and I finished my work during the last week of July, and I thought I'm going to spend the last week with my family back at home, and everything is going to be nice. But just like 3-4 days before I have to fly, it was like all of a sudden this rain started, and it just was on and on and on. And with Pakistan, when there is rain, there is no power. So all the emergency lights or whatever you got is gone after 2 days. So thank you very much again. I think it's working now. Sorry about that again. So it was just raining, and sometime dark, sometime just sitting in a light, and I was confused that whether I'm going to be able to make it or not. And right before, say, at midnight, I have to leave. Sometime around in the afternoon, one of the plane crashed at the Islamabad airport because of the rain and the fog and everything. So my family get all scared, and especially my mother. He said, "You're not going anywhere because I have to fly from the same airport." So she's like, it's not going to work. You just stay, and you're going to go after the flood. And I was like, you never know if a big flood came or something. So, but then somehow we just decided, so let's do it. So my house is about 2 hours drive from the Islamabad. I live in Peshawar. I'm sure a lot of you familiar with that city. So it's always in the news. Whatever news related to Afghanistan is come through Peshawar. So we left like around, I would say, 11 or before midnight sometime. It was raining really crazy, but somehow we managed it, and we used our SUV, but it was still raining. That tires was half covered in the water. So somehow we made it to the airport around 3, and my flight has to leave around 4:30 something, I don't remember exactly. So they dropped me at the airport, and they were gone. Like I said, you guys go because it's raining, don't stay. So when I was waiting in the airport, they delayed the flight for 10, 15 minutes because of the rain and the fog and everything, and we were not sure whether the plane's gonna take off or not, but finally we made it in the plane. When the plane took off, I felt the worst turbulence of my life that day, and I thought, this is it. Because it was so bad the first 15, 20 minutes when we were in the air. It was super crazy. I still get the kind of the feeling, because I thought, okay, maybe it was a bad idea in this plane, and I was like, Qatar Airways, just please take me somewhere at least. So finally, we just made it through the Pakistani area, but once we went outside the area, things were much better. But that was my story. I went into the plane and things got better. But what happened with my family, because when they were going back, the flood got really bad, and they were stuck several times when they would have to cross any river, because they have to cross Indus River several times, the Kabul River several times, and other small rivers or tributaries, whatever. And they were all heavy flooded. So they got stuck. The army was on the road by then, and they were helping people, diverting here and there, and sending some people back and something. But it took about 8 to 9 hours, my family, to reach back home to Peshawar, which was normally a 2-hour drive. But it took them about 8, 9 hours, and 2 of their tires were burst because of the debris and stuff in the water, whatever it was. But luckily, because we used the big SUV type truck, so it worked, and they reached back home. And they had a hard time getting into the house because there was kind of water. And because we live in the actual city, and for some reason the city is slightly higher elevation than the surroundings, so the city itself was a bit better than the rest of the surroundings. So the city of Peshawar was giving the idea of kind of island. So it was water everywhere, but the city was just slightly above the water, and people were trying to get into the city. So whoever made it, they made it. Whoever get left behind, or because majority of the bridges were gone by then, so there was no connection to the city. So whoever was in the city, they were in the city. Whoever was outside, they would remain outside. And because of that, 2, 3 of my sister who lives in the country, they were in the house because I was there. So they were stuck. They couldn't go back to their houses, and their houses are all empty, and there's raining, and there's water everywhere. So their houses are on the line because nobody's watching their houses anywhere in the countryside. Their lands and in their farms, and their animals are out there. So they had a problem. They cannot go, but that is just a story of my house. But it's because I'm basically not a country person. We live in a city, but we have a country and farms and stuff like that. So just like every other people, our farm was underwater, or my cousins, my uncles, their houses were quite underwater because they live in the outside the city areas, the countrysides. So they were pretty much underwater, but there was no communication because the phone lines were down, the power is down, so nobody can contact each other. So it's up to the government. So people are just sitting there waiting for the government, and if the government reaches to people, it's good. If not, it's up to their houses, that how long their house is gonna survive. So, but I got all these stories 2 days later when I actually reached the US, because when I was in the plane, I hardly got any news, because all I knew that my family dropped me and they'd gone back. But I had the feeling, because when I was flying that first 15, 20 minutes, I looked down and through the clouds, and there was like water and raining. So being a geologist, geographer, I had the feeling that it's going to be bad. And it was worst. I just thought bad, it was worst. So because I'm from that particular region which was destroyed the most, so I may lost, actually I did, a couple of my friends or the people I knew or the guys I would say hang out with in the country or sometimes, so they're gone, their houses are gone and everything. So that's pretty much my story, and I keep in touch with them, and I still get the news from my friends over there that some people still live on the roadsides and just sitting there and try to get as much as they can because their houses are gone, they're big families, they were like they were upper middle and middle class people, because this time the flood actually destroyed the main cities. It wasn't like some rural area flood which mainly covered the farms or all those lands. It actually hit the cities. So the people living inside the city, they were all a normal middle class or upper middle class type people. All they got their houses or their jobs or their stores or their shops, which are totally gone. So now those people who don't know anything else beside their work or job or their kids or everything, and they are like on the roads. So that's what it is, and I'm like keep in touch with them all the time, but I get all these news, and you saw there's like millions of people waiting for different kind of aids. And I'm sure the government and everybody is helping, but help is never like completely reached to everybody, and nobody gets satisfied because they always want more, because you cannot like make the person who has house for 1 million, you cannot give him 10,000 or 50,000 and think that he's going to make everything with that one, because he's going to need more and more and more. So that's what it is. Thank you very much, everybody. And I'm happy if you guys have any question for me, I'm ready to answer.
When will you be returning?
It depends when I get my degree, if I get one. But hopefully I'm trying maybe this or next semester to get my master's somehow. And I'll be back. Thank you very much, everybody.
Yeah, Faisal, thank you very much. And, you know, putting on these events, you know, it takes a certain time and energy and motivation. And, you know, when we hear Faisal speak, you know, it just makes me so very happy that we're all here together tonight. And hopefully we can make a difference. You know, we're going to make a difference tonight. We're going to be able to send some money, and we're going to make a difference in our hearts because we're going to be able to connect. You know, we know Faisal, we know much more about the people in Pakistan, and this effort will just continue to go on. And Faisal, thank you very much. It's hard to get up and tell your story, and Faisal is a phenomenal man, so I really thank you sincerely. And yeah, and you know, we're going to keep your family and your country and your friends and in our prayers, and we're going to do what we can. And so we're grateful that we can do something. And Sarah Halverson is going to speak. And I think a lot of you know Sarah. She is the chair of the geography department. And, you know, we could have just had a fundraiser that, you know, la la la, here's a silent auction, but we wanted it to be very meaningful, to really talk about what's happening here in the world. And Sarah's going to talk to you a little bit about the floods and the devastation and why this happened, you know, how so many what we call natural disasters aren't really so natural. And so Sarah has a wonderful presentation. And then after Sarah, then Solmaz is going to be talking for a few minutes. We're going to have actually a fun little live auction, and then John Turk. So stay. Okay.
Okay, great. Thank you, Georgia. Let's see, we'll just move to the slides. There we go. And first I want to say thank you so much for being here. It's really wonderful to have all of you here, and we really appreciate you coming on this evening. By way of introduction, I would like to say a little bit about some basic geographical aspects of the Indus Basin. So as a geographer, I use geography as a starting point. So hopefully you can see these slides here, and I have a laser pointer that I'm going to try to highlight a little bit. What we're looking at here is Asia and South Asia, Southeast Asia being down here. Here's China and India right here, and here's the country of Pakistan. I'd like to first emphasize that in the Indus Basin system, the basin is very, very dynamic, and it's important to remember that floods and flooding on a very large scale are part of the physical processes and natural cycles in this basin. So it's not unusual to have flood events, and human communities have adapted to flooding for many, many years. The Indus Basin is the lifeblood, or the Indus River is the lifeblood of the Islamic Republic of Pakistan. So here's the borders of Pakistan. Pakistan borders India. It also borders Iran right here, which you could just barely see, Afghanistan to the northwest, and the Wakhan corridor here of Afghanistan is the border, is sort of creates a space between Pakistan and Tajikistan. Tajikistan is not that far away, really. And then to the northeast is the border that Pakistan shares with China. And this region of Kashmir, this is Kashmir, which you've probably heard about, is a disputed territory between Pakistan and India. So the Indus Basin actually does not originate in Pakistan. It originates up here in the Tibetan Plateau, not too far from Lake Mansaravar, which is very close to Mount Kailash. And the point of origin of the Indus is not very far from where the Ganges originates, about 100 kilometers from where the Ganges originates, and then also in that area, the Brahmaputra, Sangpo Brahmaputra also originates. So 3 of the largest rivers of South Asia originate in this same area. So the Indus Basin actually flows north and to the west, and then it bends around the western Himalaya, and specifically the westernmost anchor of the western Himalaya, which is Nanga Parbat, and then it curves and heads south through Pakistan. Other interesting features of this region is that the basin contains some of the highest peaks in the world. So we've got the Hindu Kush mountains, which dominate most of Afghanistan, but they also bend into this direction where northern Pakistan is, and the Indus, the Hindu Kush converge or collide with the Karakoram Mountains, which are also in this area. We've got the Pamir Mountains as well, and then we've got the Western Himalayas. So we've got massive mountain ranges, and this whole area then is the headwaters for the Indus Basin. So we've got major rivers draining out of the Hindu Kush, the Karakoram, and the Western Himalaya, all flowing into the Indus. Okay, so a little bit of the geography. The delta, this rich deltaic environment meets the Arabian Sea. So here's the Arabian Sea right here. So that's a little bit of the lay of the land of the basin. We know that the monsoonal trend this year directly from the Arabian Sea. So the monsoon is actually a reference to the wind. And so when we think about the monsoons, we need to keep in mind that we're talking about the winds and the circulation patterns in this area. So the winds are blowing here off the Arabian Sea. And we know that the monsoonal trend this year was unusual. We can also say that this unusual trend has seemed more frequent in the past past 20 years than in the period from 1960 to 1990, or based on those 1960 to 1990 averages. Whether this event is part of long-term change or just an outlier is really hard to say. And I've had a lot of people say, well, is this because of climate change? And we cannot conclude that the floods are tied to climate change. Climate change is perhaps one of many variables that influence the climatic patterns and the hydroclimatic dimensions of this basin. But it is interesting to note that this trend was very unusual. Some suggest that, and this has been repeated over and over again, that approximately 4 months of monsoon precipitation fell within about a period of a week. And my colleague Jeff Gritzner and I were talking about this earlier, that it's very hard to find data that substantiates that claim. So, but some have suggested that that is the case. In the Khyber Pakhtunkhwa area where Faisal is from, which is, here's Faisal's hometown of Peshawar. Here we're looking at the basin and some of the patterns of flooding based on severity, and extreme, severe, and moderate flooding are being depicted here in this map. Well, in the Khyber Pakhtunkhwa area, in this area, where Faisal's from, the precipitation was very, very high, 179% above normal. So that is quite unusual, of course. That was for July. Events of this magnitude are rather rare, but they should not be unexpected in a basin as dynamic as this. There have been very large floods in living memory. The years 1929, 1956, 1973, and 1992 all stand out or come to mind when we think about large-scale floods in this basin that have impacted people's lives. What is especially poignant, though, about this year is the scope of the damage and destruction, as well as the intensity of the precipitation. So a number of variables played together to create a massive tragedy. By the way, I should thank Chris Walter, who's the president of the Geography Club, for putting together these great slides. So it's really, really helpful to have these, and I appreciate that. Let me see. I wanted to go back just for a minute. Let me see if I can go back here. Well, that's okay. So I'll just continue on. From MODIS imagery, we can compare surface flows from year to year. And so this is very interesting to be able to compare the flooding in the basin from year to year. And here we're looking at a view of the lower Indus River. This is about the boundary of the Punjab and Sindh provinces where they meet in the southern basin. And here we're looking at 2009. And if we go to the next slide, we're looking at the same period, so August 10th, just a day later, but for this year. And what you see here, okay, try to ignore these large blue patches. These are cloud. This is cloud cover. But we can see the band of the Indus is much, much wider than it was in the previous slide. One aspect that I should note here is that this is a very important place to look at what's happening in the river, because this is a point where we see the river at its maximum flow. So just north of this point, all of the major tributaries to the Indus have the surface flows have accumulated. So in terms of the major tributaries, we have the Kabul River that's draining out of the Hindu Kush, but there's also the Jhelum, the Chenab, the Ravi, and the Sutlej rivers, including the Indus. So this is an important place to look at. Peak discharge occurred this year in August, between August 8th and 9th at this point, which reached 32,600 cubic meters per second. So what that means is that in areas where on an average year of flooding, so keep in mind that the Indus floods every year. On an average year of flooding, the river can be 2 to 5 miles wide. This year, it was 12 miles wide to 13 miles wide in some places. So that's a significant amount of water in a very complex floodplain. Okay, I also, just to point out and to situate the Indus Basin within a broader kind of global context, the river's estimated annual flow stands around 207 cubic meters annually, which makes it the 21st largest river in terms of annual flow in the world. So very, very big basin. Okay, so moving on here. There we go. Okay, the government has estimated that over 20 million people have been directly affected by the flood. Just to put this in perspective, Pakistan in 2005 experienced a very tragic disaster. It was the Kashmir earthquake that killed 76,000 people, and about 1 million people were rendered homeless. In this particular case, we have so many million people affected that it's just really kind of unfathomable. There is much evidence that historically human communities have adapted to seasonal flooding in the Indus Basin. And some examples or some evidence of this is clear in the indigenous agricultural techniques, such as those associated with salaba cultivation, which requires people to respond and be in tune with floodwaters because they do recessional farming. Also, historically, and when I'm talking historically, I'm talking pre-200 years ago, the settlement patterns were very active in that there were communities in the basin, but people were able to be on the move as well. And that mobility was very important during periods of flooding so that they could get out of the way. So historically, we can look at the historic record and see evidence of people understanding the ways of a floodplain. However, under British colonial rule, starting around the early 1800s and mid-1800s, the settlement patterns and agricultural systems, as well as the whole hydrology of the Indus, was totally reworked. And this is very important to understand. There was a tremendous effort on the part of British colonial bureaucrats and engineers to basically tame and control the Indus and put the Indus to productive use, meaning settle people and put them to use growing products, commodities, agricultural commodities, that the British colonial powers could then trade on a global market and profit from. So in that process, an elaborate system of levees, dikes, barrages, and thousands, if you will, of canals were built, which ultimately drew people into the floodplain as the floodplain was drained. So that whole dynamic system of a floodplain was changed over starting 150 years ago or more. So populations then during this time have of course expanded, and over time vulnerability to flood hazards has actually intensified, especially in the past 40 years. And what this schematic is showing is some of the complexity, and I really like this, and Chris Walter, who's a modeler and statistician, has put this really interesting diagram together, which some of you may not be able to see in the background, but basically it's showing a lot of these factors having to do with population growth, increased agriculture in the floodplain, increased cattle growing, channelization and canals and the levees and diking that have all contributed to actually drawing people into a very vulnerable situation. On top of that, then, we also have other factors of environmental degradation, such as massive deforestation taking place in the upper reaches of the Indus Basin. And I've experienced and witnessed this firsthand. My first time to Pakistan was in '94 when I spent a summer there working with the Aga Khan Rural Support Program and actually interacted with members of what are referred to as the timber mafia. And the timber mafia is actually very well organized at the local and regional and national levels to pull out logs, very beautiful, in some cases old growth, and send this timber to downcountry areas. It's very, very profitable, it's very lucrative, and there's a lot of corruption that involves the government. And what we're seeing now is in the upper reaches of the Indus Basin, a dramatic impact on the watersheds. And so the whole integrity of the basin is compromised. The result, as you know, is tremendous human impacts, widespread famine and disease and poverty. And the government of Pakistan has been criticized for being rather ill-prepared. But nevertheless, I think we could argue that any country would probably have a hard time managing the circumstances of this disaster. And I think what we could really conclude is that coping and responding is really concentrated at the individual scale, at the household scale, at the neighborhood scale, and through kinship and friendship networks where people are trying to respond in some way to manage the situation. So in closing, I'd like to just underscore the point that the Indus Basin is served as one of the world's premier water development and management laboratories with a record that extends back 6 million years to the Harappan period. But over time, we have seen today, witnessed today, that this catastrophe has deep social and historical and political roots that are rooted in the global economy even, and linked to environmental degradation and the disruption of viable indigenous systems. So as we move forward, the hope is that through support and compassion, that we can help support those in the Indus Basin who are really dependent on the Indus waters for their livelihoods. That we should seek to try to empower them so that they can be strengthened to rebuild and reconstruct their lives in ways that will be more resilient and less vulnerable. So thank you very much for your time.
And this is Solmaz. And Solmaz is from Teachers Without Borders. She's partnering up with the POTA group, and she's going to talk about what the work they're doing in Pakistan. She's a phenomenal woman. She was a student here at the University of Montana. She is living and working in Bozeman. She's originally from Iran and has this incredible compassionate heart, and we're very lucky to have her here. Thank you.
Well, hello everyone. Thank you so much for being here. It's always good to be back in Missoula and to have all these groups coming together to raise funds and awareness about the situation in Pakistan. So I'm going to focus on two things here. One is Teachers Without Borders, and the other item is POTA, which is the Potahar Organization for Development Advocacy, and our connection with POTA, and what POTA and Teachers Without Borders and a number of other NGOs, including UNICEF, are doing together to reach out to the people who have been affected by the floods in Pakistan. I'm the member of Teachers Without Borders, and I'm also the Director of Emergency Education at Teachers Without Borders. Our emergency education focuses mainly on prevention and planning, and we work with school communities, particularly teachers and school administrators, to provide information and resources that they need in order to plan and prepare for natural and also man-made disasters. And as part of this emergency education program, we form partnerships with people and organizations that are on the ground and working in the field. And POTA is one of the many organizations that we are working with. Our commitment with POTA started back in 2003 when the organization was established in one village. And to this day, POTA is working in more than 65 villages in the Potahar region of Pakistan. POTA is a women advocacy group. They work with women farmers. They help women to learn more about sustainable agriculture, which is a really a big problem right now in Pakistan because of the floods. A lot of the lands that people used to use for farming have been flooded, and many of the lands that people weren't farming there now, they have enough water, so they have actually become, to some extent, really good in terms of agriculture. So POTA is working with mainly women in rural Pakistan to help them go back to their lands and focus on agriculture. And they are, in fact, not only working to provide psychosocial support services and care, but they're also looking for people who are knowledgeable about agriculture, and that can help POTA and the institution itself to provide agricultural information to people on the ground, especially women farmers. We partner with PODA to support and adopt a camp, an IDP camp, which is an internally displaced persons camp near the city of Karachi in southern Pakistan. This IDP camp is called the Kamari camp, and the Kamari camp currently has about 10,000 people in them, and these 10,000 people are the people who have been affected by the flood situation, and they're mainly from the Sindh province, which is one of the provinces that has been affected very badly by the flood. Of these 10,000 people in this camp, 5,000 of them are children, and PODA is setting up child-friendly spaces to create a friendly space and a safe space for children and also for women to come to play, to be kids, to receive some literacy support. Many of these children, their education has been interrupted. Many of them, they had never attended schools before. So part of these child-friendly spaces, part of the activities that takes place in these spaces is to provide some kind of an education and outreach to these children. PODA is also hiring teachers within the camp. These are the teachers who don't have any jobs right now because their schools have been affected by the floods, and they're just living in the camps right now. So PODA is reaching out to those teachers and bringing them to these child-friendly spaces to work with children. So it's an honor for Teachers Without Borders to really partner with this organization, and not just to provide financial support so that they can reach out to more people, but also we see it as our commitment to PODA to connect them with our other people that have the knowledge necessary to help people in Pakistan. For instance, we work with a lot of the people in the Sichuan province who were affected by the 2008 earthquake in China, and as part of our connection with people there, we work with the psychology department at the Chengdu University to provide psychosocial services and support to the Chinese people. And now we are connecting those people who provided such services to the earthquake-affected people. We're connecting them with people in Pakistan, especially through PODA, so that they can share their experiences that they went through working with traumatized people, and the kind of psychosocial services that they provided, and the kind of lessons that they learned from the 2008 earthquake, sharing those lessons with PODA so that they can be more effective in setting up psychosocial support camps within the Kamari camp right now. I'm going to focus on the child-friendly spaces, and many of you might be familiar with this term, and I described a little bit what a child-friendly space may look like, but I thought it would be better if I share a very brief 3-minute video with you that was put together by UNICEF. And this is a video of a child-friendly space in the Sindh province, again, one of the provinces that was heavily affected by the floods. And in this video, the focus is mainly on children and people with special needs. But just by looking at this video, you'll get a sense of what a child-friendly space is and how important it is to build these spaces right now for children, and then I'll share some photographs of some of the child-friendly spaces that PODA and Teachers Without Borders, in partnership with Roshni, which is a children rights network based in Karachi, and also the Pakistan Mental Health Association. They have all gotten together to create these spaces for children to basically allow them to be kids again. So,
you are watching UNICEF Television. In a country where child protection is already a neglected issue, thousands more children in Pakistan continue to be put at risk as a result of the displacement caused by the flood crisis. The floods have enhanced vulnerability risk for children who already face the threat of violence, abuse, exploitation, and nearly all have witnessed death and the destruction of their schools and homes.
When the floodwaters came, we were sleeping. We woke up to the people screaming. We did not have time to pick up anything. We had only time to run with the water in full pressure behind us.
UNICEF and their partners are assisting affected children and families, and a critical part of the effort involves setting up of safe spaces for children and women to ensure safety and a sense of normalcy in their lives once again. The child-friendly spaces provide life skills, and recreational activities, as well as much needed psychosocial support. Here, UNICEF has promoted a gender balance and especially encourages the participation of young girls.
When we first came here, we were very depressed, and some aid workers opened a child center and asked all the children to participate.
When Rihanna first came, she was very scared of all she and her family had gone through and had no confidence. She felt that she was not a good person because she did not speak or hear like the other children. We began to work closely with her to help her overcome her fear and gain back her self-esteem.
At the center, the workers are very kind. We get to play and draw, and we even get dolls to play with. I had a doll in my village, but the floods washed her away.
Some people are going back to their original places, but still they are going back, they don't have homes, they don't have the infrastructure. And it is expected that they'll be here for some time, like maybe a couple of months more. So we need to upscale them, we need to have more child-friendly spaces so that we can reach out to more children, especially to the children who are hard to reach and in areas which is not accessible.
I love the center. They even teach us writing and alphabets. In the village, my mother says I can't go to school because I can't speak or hear. So I don't want to go back to my village. I want to stay here.
Although humanitarian assistance has addressed child protection, much more is needed to be done on key issues, such as tracing missing and separated children, providing psychosocial care for traumatized children, preventing social discrimination and abuse. UNICEF urges the international community to continue their support to further the creation and implementation of protective environments to equip these communities to better deal with the many risks they face. This is Natasha D'Souza reporting from Jamshoro, Sindh. For more information, go to unicef.org. Unite for Children.
So as I mentioned, PODA is a non-governmental organization. It's a local organization that has responded to the flood situation in Pakistan. And here is a picture of outside of a child-friendly space that PODA and Teachers Without Borders have put together in the Kamari camp in southern Pakistan. And this camp, as I said, has about 10,000 people. And it was one of the biggest camps that was set up due to the flood in Pakistan. When PODA went and did an assessment study of this camp before adopting and supporting this camp, they noticed that a lot of services weren't provided, and this camp was one of the very few camps that weren't receiving a lot of support from people. So PODA basically reached out to other organizations such as Pakistan Mental Health Association, Teachers Without Borders, Roshni Helpline, and a number of other organizations, including UNICEF, to adopt this camp and set up these spaces. This is a picture of the Kamari camp, and this is just right outside of the child-friendly space where we have set up a volleyball net for where children can play. And here's inside of the tent, which has been decorated by handcrafts and children's artwork. And here's a picture of a number of children that are coming to these camps. This camp is really crowded, so we really need to make sure that we have enough child-friendly spaces where all children can go to. And at the center of this picture, you actually see Samina Nazir, who is the executive director of PODA, and she's playing or teaching children a game board. Just before coming to this event, I received an email from Samina. She's in Washington, D.C. right now, although she spends most of her time in Islamabad and flies back and forth between Karachi and Islamabad to visit the camp and make sure that it's managed. And Samina sent her regards to all of you, and thank you for coming here and to learning more about PODA and supporting some of the activities that PODA is doing, especially the child-friendly spaces. Here's a picture of children, again, playing a game board, and all of these toys and games are also brought to these child-friendly spaces where children can not only be schooled, but also can just play around and, instead of spending their time outside of the city or within the camp, they have a safe space to go to be with other kids. And here are the teachers that, just very few of the teachers that were recruited by PODA to work with these students. And as you can see, these child-friendly spaces are not just for women, even though PODA is a women advocacy group, but they try to reach out to everyone, including to adults. And that brings us to a psychosocial counseling support center that PODA and Teachers Without Borders have set up for traumatized children, but also for teachers and adults and parents that are living in the camp, but they have been traumatized and they don't really have a space to go to talk about what happened, to talk about the floods, to connect with each other within the camp and receive the kind of support that they need. Okay, so again, I'd like to thank all of you for coming here. I'll be around to talk about PODA and the kind of work we are doing, or talk about Teachers Without Borders. I also would like to tell you that Fred Metnick, the founder of Teachers Without Borders, is also here with us today. So please, if you have any questions about Teachers Without Borders and our work with PODA in Pakistan, come to us and we'll give you more information about it. Thank you so much.
It's such an honor to have John Turk here. And he drove all the way from Canada. He's from all over the world, and he drove in for this event tonight. He never says no. And he's an incredible man. He's not only a scientist, but he's this incredible, actually spiritual leader. He has explored the world. He kayaked across the Pacific Ocean. He's a man of great talents, great stories, great heart, great mind, and mind in the greatest sense. You have to see his 3 of his books. He has over 25 books out. He is phenomenal. He has 3 of his books here for sale, and they are so worth buying. They're wonderful Christmas presents, and we're so lucky to have John Turk. So thank you so much, John, for coming.
Whoa, thank you, Georgia. Yeah. When I first got the email from Georgia and Nikki asking me to come here, yeah, I brought tears to my eyes. I started to cry. I was sitting down in the office by myself, with my little blow-up penguin, hanging over my head, and I started to cry. It's like, wow, my work has brought me, this kind of opportunity to come here and talk at a, an event like this and helping people all over the world. So, yeah. And then I read the title of my talk, Disaster, Coping, and 21st Century Needs. And there's a certain academic authority to this title. And I got kind of scared. Yeah, woo. So we'll do the best we can. Yeah, okay, hey, look. In this world that we live in, this 21st century world we live in, we build complex systems. Systems with many opportunities to go wrong and with great possibility of disaster if they do go wrong. And most of the time, these mechanical systems that we build, actually work. And sometimes they don't, and we have huge disasters like 3 Mile Island or Chernobyl, or the the terrible, terrible, terrible tragedy of the Deepwater Horizon oil spill not too long ago. Now, what's less well known, but which has been brought out today, is that half of the Earth, 47%, I think, is controlled, managed by people. Yeah, half. As a complex system, you see, and we start managing these systems, and sometimes they fail. And here's an example of a hillside in Nepal where you cut down the trees, you terrace it, you don't build the terraces very well, the monsoon comes, the hill collapses. See, so we're living on a planet that's a managed system, just like the Deepwater Horizon oil well. So we have a big vested interest, ladies and gentlemen, in having these systems not fail. How do we do that? Well, there's two components to having a system fail or not fail. There's the engineering. Yeah, when I get on an airplane, like everybody else in that airplane, I have a very strong vested interest that the wings will not fall off the airplane. And the reasons the wings will or will not fall off the airplane is because they're engineers, they're metallurgists, they're assembly people at the Boeing plant, and they keep the wings on the airplane. And this kind of linear, left brain, logical development is very, very handy at keeping wings on airplanes. It's keeping overpasses, freeway overpasses from falling down, and all this kind of stuff, which is what we need in our world. But at the other hand, all of these systems are operated and functioning by and with people. You see, now I'm not going to give you a lecture in engineering. You know, we're not here to talk about materials design or even ecosystem design. We know that the Pakistani floods, that the disaster Katrina were caused by natural events, rain and hurricanes and things like that, exacerbated by not just poor, but tragically, abysmally miserable management of our natural ecosystems. So what I'm here to talk about is the human component of our management of our planet. Woo! Yeah, okay. So now, when I got into this, I have a friend who's a foreman of oil drilling rigs for British Petroleum. You know those guys, the Deepwater Horizon guys. And he's a good friend. We were going for a mountain bike ride, and we were up on top. We were taking a rest. I said, Paul, I want to talk to you about that disaster at Deepwater Horizon, not about the engineering components, whether the casings were too big or too little, or the mud was the right consistency. I want to talk about that. I want to ask you about the guys on the drill rig floor when they're drilling. What are you thinking? How are you trained to think? How are you trained to respond to this terribly responsible position that you're in? I'm not making this up. He said, at our training, we are trained to live in a state of chronic unease, fear. We are taught that the best way to manage our existence on this planet is through fear. Whoa. We got to find other way to look at the system. We got to find the other way to manage what we're doing. So I'm going to go back into looking at people who have lived in very complex situations, in very difficult situations, the harshest conditions on the planet, and have survived with their communities for hundreds and thousands of years, and ask how they have lived, how our ancestors have lived, how humanity evolved. Yeah. I have here, if anybody wants to look at this, this is an incredibly beautiful object. You can't really see it. This is a harpoon point that I dug out its bone or walrus ivory, I'm not sure. I dug it out of a melting permafrost in northeast Siberia. Look how big it is. It's about the size of my finger. It's intricately carved. Now, I want you to imagine tying this on the end of a long stick and going out in 50 below and hunting mammoths for a living. This is what our ancestors did. This takes a strong throwing arm, it takes cooperation, it takes planning, it takes left brain logic, but it takes something well beyond. And I've spent 40 years off and on in the Arctic, living with the hunters of the northern Arctic zones. And what I'm going to talk to you about is an alternate way to surviving and flourishing with our planet, with complex systems, an alternate way to chronic fear, chronic unease. I wrote a book called The Raven's Gift about 5 expeditions I took to Northeast Siberia and the people I met there. And, you know, in a 20-minute talk, I certainly don't have time to discuss all the nuances. Actually, I wrote 2 books about this part of the world. But during many months of travel by kayak, by dog sled, by skis across the tundra, we had the opportunity to talk to and to live with people who live in the harshest environment on the earth. People who have intense practical skills. These men, you travel out on the tundra and they can pull a snow machine apart in the middle of a blizzard with a screwdriver and a pair of pliers and rebuild it with no spare parts. But in all of these travels, I found that the reliance, the fundamental platform of reliance, was on acceptance, on belief in magic. Yeah. You know, at one point in my travels, I got hurt, really badly hurt. I was lying on the snow, I couldn't stand up. My traveling companions were like, John, man, don't worry about it. You know, it wasn't like we guarantee that we're going to fix you up. It was whatever, we're out here on the tundra, we're connected to the landscape. It's okay. It's magic. We don't need chronic unease. Now, in my book, I talk about a healing, a shamanic healing from a 96-year-old woman who was born during the age of Tsar Nicholas II. But I'm not talking about that tonight because I don't want to get hung up on this concept. Some people, when they think of shamans, of healers, of medicine people on the tundra, you think about a physical healing. What can they do for me? That's not the right question to ask. So yeah, it's in my books. If you're interested, you can read about it. But what I'm going to talk about is something that I think that is much more important. The healing is secondary. This woman is named Marina. We visited with her and spent the afternoon. I'm going to read a short passage out of my book. Marina stood up, walked into a dark corner, and came back with the stick, almost like a war club, adorned with bits of fur, rusted bent length of chain, beads, and a very dried up red fox hanging by its left hind foot, staring outward. Have people told you how we lost our reindeer? She asked, shaking the club almost threateningly. Yes, people told me that the Koryak lost their deer due to bandito capitalism, loss of markets, predation, and vodka. They told you what happened, but not why it happened. We lost our reindeer because we threw away our medicine sticks, like this one. With this medicine stick, a small family can raise 2,000 to 3,000 reindeer. No problem. But without this stick, you cannot do this thing. Marina just about clunked me over the head. I almost ducked, but held still. Marina raised the medicine stick until the fox's eyes were staring straight into mine. Through those eyes, I tried to imagine the tundra as it was when she was a little girl, with tens of thousands of reindeer, with children playing, with girl mothers giving birth in the snow. The Koryak people lost their magic first. They lost their shamans. They lost their beliefs. They forgot that everything has magic. Everything. Do you hear me? They threw their magic sticks away. If you lose the magic in your life, then you lose your power. You must write this in your book. You must promise me. This is just the opposite of what we learn in our society. You know, they teach us that, you know, I heard on the news today, I heard an incredible statement on the news today driving down here. It was by one of the big honchos of Chevron. He said, "We don't like uncertainty." Yeah, we don't like uncertainty. Sorry, buddy, you got it, whether you like it or not, you know. If you're open to magic, you don't make statements like that. And they try to tell us that we don't have power with our magic. And I'm trying to say it's just the opposite. I'm going to cheat now a little bit. You know, I'm not a scholar. But I did read an article in the New Yorker recently, just a few weeks ago, about the Dalai Lama. And about 2/3 of the way through the article, they had a very short paragraph that summarized much of what the Dalai Lama has to say. So I'm going to put it here. I find that the Buddhist teachings and the teachings of the Koryak shaman and the shamans in the tundra of Siberia are very similar. So what is magic? What's magic all about? Well, the Dalai Lama puts compassion first. And I put under that community. And compassion for ourselves, for our communities, for our planet. Yeah, if you have compassion, you don't skimp when you're drilling an oil well in the Gulf of Mexico. You don't skimp because you have compassion. You have love for all the creatures, for everything. And interdependence, you know. I'm an adventurer. That's what I do sometimes. And when you're an adventurer, you put yourself intentionally in forces much greater than you are. It sort of, you know, compresses it because we're in amidst forces greater than we are when we're not on a big adventure. But it's kind of like highlighted. My good friend Eloise Thompson said, "John, what you're saying is what everybody knows. You just need to be hit over the head with the big stick." I plead guilty to that. But when you find yourself in a situation, you see, here we are, a big slug of Arctic ice pack came slugging down out of the North Pole, and, you know, things were crashing around. You know, and they threatened to crunch us. You see, now we didn't happen to have, you know, you're vulnerable, and you find the joy of vulnerability. And interdependence is the joy of vulnerability, the joy of being part of it. It's not driving a bulldozer to make it the way you want to. And then once you become interdependent, or once you become part of the flow of it, then it just kinds of works out. And I think one of the, not I think, I'm absolutely certain that one of the biggest problems when we manage ecosystems is we try to not be interdependent. We try to be controlling of them, not working with them. And then we have disasters like the Pakistan flood that brought us here today. Emptiness, the tundra. It's the opposite of stuff. Yeah. Did anybody know that the sales of Walmart decreased by 0.782% last month? And that's a big bummer. Emptiness, emptiness, and many, many forms of emptiness, emptiness, cleanliness. And the Dalai Lama didn't say this, and I take a little bit of liberty, but I'm going to add this to the list as my last slide. Joy. I love this slide because this boy is reaching out for a bubble. He's leaping, he's flying, he's smiling, he's laughing, he's joyful that he's going to touch this bubble. And you know what happens? The instant he touches the bubble, it will be gone. And he knows that. And that's part of the joy. And to me, this is, you know, the metaphor. The bubble is the moment. We reach out to touch that moment, because that moment is the most important thing in the world right now. And we leap for it with great joy, with the full knowledge that the moment we touch it, it won't be there anymore. Thank you all very much.
We're going to start a film. This is a very eclectic evening, and so for us people who want to stay and watch the film, it's going to be a treat. Simone Ellis, this is unseen footage of the Dalai Lama when he was in Sun Valley. But thank you so much for coming tonight and kind of sharing with us our really heartfelt intent to help decrease some suffering and bring more joy in the world. We're going to be starting this film. Simone Ellis is going to introduce it. And it was going to originally be a 10-minute film clip, but it was too precious and too beautiful. It is 25 minutes. And please feel free to see it. It's never been seen before. It's beautiful footage of the Dalai Lama. And this is Simone Ellis, the videographer, what do you call yourself? The producer, the director, Okay.
Producer,
Simone Ellis, thank you.
Hey, thank you. Thank you for coming. And when we first started this, I don't know whether Nikki mentioned that, in fact, the idea was just to show a film that we'd made called Hands for Compassion, set at 9/11, right after Katrina. And that's all we were going to do. And then so many sponsors have come on board that it's turned into a much bigger and much bigger hearted event. And I thank all the sponsors for doing this. Though this, as advertised, most of this footage has never been viewed before. It's taken from several different visits, actually, that I've had with His Holiness that I've covered. And it's made exclusively for this event. And it's probably the only time that it will be shown. It specifically talks about the environment and global warming, but also one of the parts, so those of you who did see Hands for Compassion, I just wanted to let you know you're going to see the same beginning that you saw in Hands for Compassion, but it's not the same film. It's only 10 minutes of that, and though I have seen that section so many times, I know the words by heart. I have hardly mastered its content, and it seemed very, very relevant to the subject tonight. And and then also the other thing that's probably not needed to be said, you'll know, but there are two clips about what he always refers to as the gap between the rich and poor. Just know that they are distinct clips. And again, they seem very relevant to what's going on in Pakistan. And Ani Saring Wangmo is here. She's the one who is singing, who gave us her beautiful Om Mani Padme Hum as the lead-in, and this is Ani. Thank you. And thank you very much. Thanks for coming. All right.
Dear brothers and sisters, I am extremely happy to be here with you. And I think the environment, the scenery, very beautiful, very peaceful. And most important, I think people, a big number of people, big gathering. When my friend asked about compassion, I think everybody hand, you see, go like that. So that means you, some kind of promise, rest of your life will be more compassionate. I think that's wonderful. So once you now determined, rest of your life will be a more compassionate person. So now, since from today, I think you should quarrel less. You should fight less. Of course, occasionally, sometimes, even myself, I always try to sort of say altruism, and not only in this life, but till space remain, till sentient beings suffering remain, I will remain in order to serve. This is my sort of determination. But that does not mean I never lose my temper. Occasionally I lose my temper, and sometimes I used to say harsh words. So you also, occasionally as a human being, some trouble with your neighbor, your friend, come. But basically, basic person should be more compassionate person. So that, firstly, you will be more peaceful person. You become more peaceful person, more calm mind. result, I think the first benefit, most benefit goes up to yourself. With more calm mind, on the basis of compassion, when you come across disturbances, it won't disturb much. So in deep down, your calm mind always can sustain. As a result, your sleep, less disturbances, your digestion will be more normal. Through that way, days and nights, weeks and months, years, your life becoming more happier. Your health also more better. And then one individual becoming more peaceful, then when we come across some kind of disagreement or conflict, we can easily solve this conflict through human way. Will not be out of control. Although human society, some conflict, some disagreement always happen. Even within oneself, idea which occur in morning and the evening, there will be conflict, contradictory. But all these contradictories as a conflict can solve within, I think, the compassionate atmosphere. So that's actually, I think, the principle of non-violence. Non-violence does not mean you are doing nothing or absence from the trouble. No. You should, because you fully engage in the problem, but try to solve the problem within the atmosphere of friendship or compassion. So then, I think meaningful dialogue can take place. So in any way, as a sort of response for, because
this is partly in response to your enthusiastic response to the making the pledge for compassion. So I just wanted to affirm it.
So I would like to make clear, sometimes people get the impression, the idea or concept of compassion, forgiveness, these things are something like religious matter. I think actually not that case. Then secondly, if you practice compassion, it is something good for other, but not necessarily helpful to oneself. I think that also a mistake, as I mentioned earlier. I think most beneficial goes to practitioner himself or herself. That's very clear. According to my own little experience, as my friend, as I mentioned, my life go through a lot of difficulties and painful experiences. But I think, hopefully, my mental state quite peaceful. Although a lot of painful sort of, news or heartbreaking sort of news or events happen, still, my basic sort of mental attitude still can remain calm. So through my own experience, inner warm-heartedness or compassionate attitude is something truly precious. This precious we cannot buy through supermarket. Right? or this inner precious cannot be produced by sophisticated machines or pharmaceutical sort of the medicines. So this must develop within ourselves. And also the seed of such sort of precious by birth already there. No need effort to acquire from outside, but from birth we have the seed of this precious, this quality. So pay more attention about our inner value. Your life will be more happier. So, that
I noticed that the flag is lowered down today.
Mr. Tondashanda Yoruti, that Teri Nimati Azujigda, Nyang Chansu Chagi, Nimashati.
So this reminds me that today is a day to commemorate the tragic events.
And in Yajaranta, she Yat Kazoktak, she gang and Shukundevici.
And also, we are all aware that recently United States has also been hit with great tragedy, natural disaster.
So one is man-made tragedy, one by nature. Of course, both cases, I think, tremendous sort of painful experiences. Not only those people who really experienced on the spot, but like myself, who watching television really feel very sad, very sad. So I want to share with you and also those, I think, thousands of people who really suffer directly, and also who lost their friends, their lovers, their relatives. So I would like to share, their sadness. Now, those people who died, who passed away, or who died, or who killed, now as a believer, after death, still whatever you call soul or self, still there, according different sort of tradition. Some, according some sort of tradition, of course, life after life, go like that way. But according some tradition, still their soul remain till, I think, final judgment, like that. So therefore, our prayer, according theistic believer, then to God, to Creator, and according those non-theistic, pray to higher being, like Buddha, Bodhisattvas, but all have sort of same experience to pray. So I think, let us pray together, all those souls. There's some questions now.
First question, why has most of the conflict throughout history of the world happened in the name of religion? Especially if all religions share the same core values of peace and love. What can we do to change this?
I think firstly, you see, due to some mischievous sort of people from certain religious follower, if we generalize whole that religion, I think that's a mistake. Of course, mischievous sort of people everywhere, among the Buddhists, among the Hindus, among the Muslim, among the Christian, among the Jews, everywhere. So, due to a few handfuls of people's misbehavior, if we blame the whole religion, the whole tradition, I think that's absolutely wrong. I think 1 year after, you see, September 11th event, I was in Washington. So in Washington, I think the National Cathedral. I mentioned there, sometimes in the West, you see, media people or sometimes even books, you see, they create some kind of impression, the clash between Western civilization and Muslim. I think that's wrong. And also, you see, due to some of these terrorists, you see, come from Muslim community, so then blame everything on the Muslim as a whole. I think that's wrong. I have some Muslim friends, very gentle, very compassionate. I think one example, in Lhasa, when I was there, since my childhood, there are some Muslims, about few thousand Muslims there, mainly come from India. These Muslims, very gentle, no record of quarrel by these Muslims, very gentle. And also some of my Muslim friends, told me, according to Quran, the person who creates bloodshed or who creates suffering on other is actually not true Muslim. So therefore, it is wrong to blame due to some reasons, the whole tradition. Yeah, the two questions. Then they gave rich and poor. I think this is a serious matter. As a result, I think the poorer side. Firstly, I think like a major disaster, I think the first casualty, most cases, those poor people. And I think many fortunate, I think many opportunity. I think if your economic situation is poor, I think many opportunity usually I think lose or lost.
Generally, it is the case that when your economic conditions are very poor, then even though there might be opportunities around, you're often not able to take the opportunities.
Constitution gives equal right, but the economy, I think, makes differences. So therefore, it is a very serious matter. How to reduce? Other hand, the socialist method make equal. That also failed. Both former Soviet Union and the people from China, both cases I think failed. Now we need some other more, I think, the synthesis for the method, I think. But I don't know. When I visited foremost Eastern European countries just after the change of the situation, I expressed, now here you have the opportunity to keep some of the socialist ideals, ideal sort of or concept, more equal, well distributed, and meantime adopt Western market-oriented sort of dynamic sort of forces. So some kind of combination. I expressed at that time. But now I think those former Eastern European countries, I think most cases I think following the Western capitalist sort of system. Meantime, some complaints there also. Yes, next question.
You spoke a lot of, thank you, Your Holiness, you spoke a lot of personal responsibility in motivating from passion into action. How do we begin that process, and then how do we in turn ask that of our leaders?
I think long run, long term and short term. I think long term, leaders not come from sky, but from the society. If the society, some kind of, more awareness about these deeper values, then person, future generation, future leadership come from that kind of society, I think will be more will be more different. Leadership who come from the society where only competition and sometimes it's a little unhealthy sort of way, then certainly, you see, we can't blame. They come from that kind of society. As I mentioned earlier, you see, the same religious sort of believer, but because of the environmental differences, you see some differences, you see, coming. These are not intentionally, but because of the environment. That's, I think, long term. The short term, I think, ask directly leadership, at least through your the people's representative in both houses. Now ask them. They should speak more about these values. Then also ask, you see, your leader. I think America, I think completely free society. I think you have every right to ask, to express.
A lot about the importance of decreasing the gap between the rich and poor. What are you doing to achieve this with your own people, and what plans do you have in this regard for after you return to Tibet?
I think firstly, among Tibetans, no millionaire. I think in Tibet, we should learn something how to do it. I think as early as 18th century, 8th century, there was sort of, history shows some kind of
as early as 8th century in Tibet, historically, there was an attempt made from the ruler of equalization of wealth, and the history records 3 such attempts by the same king. And also,
so in any way, now me personally, my socio-economic sort of view or theory, I'm socialist. And sometimes, even such extent, I am a bit Marxist. So, half Buddhist, half Marxist. So one time in America, I think one place where I can't remember, my lecture. So I expressed that. So I am half Marxist, half Buddhist. So then, during break, one old lady approached to me. You mentioned you are half Marxist. You believe some of the socialism or socialist ideology. And she scolded me, criticized me. Originally, I mean, actually, she comes from Russia. So she's very much critical about Marxism. So I think she's shocked. The Dalai Lama described himself as a half Marxist.
We have time for one more question.
So that also, I think, I believe, you see, this some rich family, luxuries, spend a lot of money unnecessarily. Sometimes I jokingly telling, you see, people wear some diamond rings, but even you have 100 diamond ring, only 10 fingers. You're a billionaire, you may be billionaire, but same size of stomach. If 10 finger puts 10 diamond ring, looks not nice. So these all, I think, mental projection. Right. If we more realistic, then better, then more equal. If now, today, same planet, here in America, you have, I think, a surplus. Same planet in Africa, starvation. Very sad. Why? Same human being. Very sad. When we look television, I think some African states, the poor mother,
the image of watching a sickly mother trying to nurse her child with hardly any milk in her breast, that's truly tragic.
So really heartbreaking. So I cannot do much. Only thing is, appeal, please reduce gap. Now here, sometimes the poorer section, because of the frustration, sometimes anger towards the richer people. I think that's missing. I think the poorer people, instead of frustration, instead of anger, they must work hard with self-confidence. Many occasions in Africa, or few occasions in Africa, I told them, Africa, huge continent, great potential. Yeah. Now your people, you yourself must work hard with full self-confidence. And then richer family, because of that, richer nations provide equipment and material, education, expertise. But initiative must come from the poorer section themselves. I think in America also, I think some of those poorer sections, sometimes some frustration, anger, not sufficient to work hard. And on top of that, sometimes racial problem also there. So all these things, I think, they depend on the education. Last question now. the environment. You know, in the past, Chinese officials, no idea about the importance of environment. Look, during Lift Forward, Lift Forward movement, and also the Cultural Revolution, no idea. Just the maximum exploitation. Now, for example, including the large scale of deforestation. Now already, last few years, the bad result already happened. A lot of, now Chinese government now taking more serious sort of concern about the preservation of these forests. So therefore, the more experienced, more experts to go there, help to the Chinese. Now in China, also now some NGO, like environment issue, and also the protection of a wild animal. Now some cases, I think too late. Many rare species of animal now already gone. So now a little bit too late, but still, I think worthwhile make effort like that. Thank you.
We were born before the wind, also younger than the sun. And this bonny boat was one as we sailed into the mystic. Hark now, hear the sailors cry. Smell the sea and feel the sky. Let your soul and spirit fly as you sail into the mystic. When that foghorn blows in, I will be coming home. And when that foghorn blows, I wanna hear it. I don't have to fear it. I wanna rock your gypsy soul, just like way back in the days of our old. And together we'll fall as we sail into the mystic. on. And when that foghorn blows, I wanna hear it. I don't have to fear it. I wanna rock your gypsy soul, just like way back in the